What if the biggest thing stopping you from becoming successful isn't lack of money, talent, or opportunity? What if it's something much smaller but much more dangerous? Fear, not real danger, not an actual enemy standing in front of you, just fear inside your own mind. And the strange part is most people don't even realize how much control it has over their lives, because fear is quiet. It doesn't scream at you. It whispers. It says things like, what if you fail? What if people laugh at you? What if you lose money? What if you're not good enough yet? And little by little, without noticing it, your entire future starts changing around those thoughts. Not because life stopped you, because you stopped yourself. Think about how many people have ideas they never act on. A person wants to start a business. Another wants to learn a skill. Someone else wants to start investing, make content, go to the gym, apply for opportunities, change their life, but they don't move. Not because they can't, because they are afraid of looking stupid, afraid of failing publicly, afraid of making the wrong decision. So instead of taking action, they wait. They tell themselves, I'll start later. I need more preparation. I'm not ready yet. But later becomes months. Months become years, and one day they look around and realize their life never changed, not because they lacked potential, because fear kept them standing still. Imagine two people, both have the same skill level, same internet connection, same opportunities available online. One of them starts freelancing immediately. He doesn't know everything, his work isn't perfect. He gets ignored sometimes, maybe rejected too, but he keeps moving. Each month he improves a little. His confidence grows because his experience grows. Now imagine the second person. He spends all his time thinking, watching tutorials, planning, researching, waiting for confidence. He wants certainty before action, but certainty never comes. So while one person is learning through real experience, the other is trapped inside his own thoughts. And after 1 year, the gap between them looks huge. Not because one was smarter, because one acted despite fear and the other obeyed it. That's how fear destroys people, not dramatically, quietly, slowly, almost invisibly. Fear has a strange way of feeling safe. When you avoid risk, your mind feels protected. You avoid embarrassment. You avoid rejection. You avoid failure. But you also avoid growth. That's the hidden price nobody talks about. Because every time fear protects you from discomfort, it also protects you from progress. A person avoids starting a YouTube channel because they fear criticism. Years later, they watch someone younger become successful doing exactly what they were afraid to start. A person avoids investing because they fear losing money. So they keep all their money sitting still while inflation slowly destroys its value. Another person fears applying for opportunities because they think they're not qualified enough. Meanwhile, someone less qualified applies anyway and gets the position. Fear doesn't always destroy your life instantly. Sometimes it just keeps you average long enough that your dreams slowly disappear. And the most dangerous thing about fear is this: the longer you obey it, the more normal it feels. At first, fear is uncomfortable, but eventually avoiding risk becomes your identity. You start saying things like, I'm just not the type of person who takes risks. I like staying safe. I don't think big success is for me. And once you believe that, your actions start matching it. Your world becomes smaller, your goals become smaller, your future becomes smaller, all because of thoughts that may not even be true. That's another thing people misunderstand about fear. Fear exaggerates reality. It takes a small possibility and turns it into disaster inside your mind. You think, if I fail once, my life is over. But most successful people failed many times. You think, if people judge me, I'll never recover. But people forget quickly. You think, if I lose money, everything is ruined. But many wealthy people lost money before they learned how to build it properly. Fear always speaks in extremes. It makes temporary problems feel permanent. But reality is usually far less dramatic than your imagination. Think about the gym. The first day feels uncomfortable. You feel weak, lost, embarrassed. Your brain starts creating stories. People are watching you. You don't belong here. You'll quit anyway. Now imagine if you obey those thoughts, you never return, nothing changes. But if you go despite fear, something interesting happens. Week by week, the fear becomes smaller, not because the gym changed, because you changed. Confidence is not something people are born with. Confidence is built after action. That's why waiting to feel ready is one of the biggest traps in life. Most people think successful people take action because they're confident. Usually it's the opposite. They became confident because they took action, and fear hates action, because action exposes fear for what it really is. a mental prediction, not reality. There are people right now making less money than you, with fewer skills than you, with fewer resources than you, but they are ahead of you in life for one reason: they started, even while scared, even while uncertain, even while imperfect. Meanwhile, many intelligent people stay stuck for years because they keep waiting for the perfect moment. But life rarely rewards perfection. It rewards movement. It rewards people who move before they feel fully ready, and time makes this even more serious. Because fear doesn't just steal opportunities, it steals years. Someone delays starting a business for 5 years. Someone delays investing until their 30s. Someone delays changing their life until later. But later has a cost, because every year spent standing still is a year compounding against you, and compounding doesn't only apply to money, it applies to habits, skills, confidence, experience, position in life. The earlier you start moving, the more powerful time becomes. The longer fear keeps you frozen, the harder catching up becomes later, and one day many people realize something painful. They weren't actually incapable, they were just afraid for too long. That realization hurts because deep down they know if they had started earlier, their entire life might look different now. And maybe the hardest truth of all is this: fear never completely disappears. Even successful people feel it. Entrepreneurs feel fear. Investors feel fear. Athletes feel fear. Creators feel fear. The difference is simple. Average people obey fear. Successful people move anyway, because eventually they understand something powerful. Fear is not always a warning sign. Sometimes it's a sign that you're finally moving towards something bigger than your comfort zone. And everything you want in life exists outside that comfort zone. Most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid fear, but eventually something strange happens. The pain of staying the same becomes bigger than the fear of changing. And that's usually the moment everything starts shifting. Because there comes a point where a person looks at their life honestly and realizes, this can't be it. The same routine, the same excuses, the same delays, the same fear controlling every important decision, and once that realization becomes strong enough, fear starts losing power. Not instantly, not magically, but slowly. Because action changes people. Imagine someone who spent years afraid of speaking in public. Every time they imagined standing in front of people, their mind created disaster scenarios. What if I forget my words? What if people laugh? What if I embarrass myself? So they avoided every opportunity. School presentations, meetings, events, anything that forced attention onto them. But one day they're pushed into a situation where they have no choice. Maybe at work, maybe in business, maybe in life, and their hands shake, their voice feels nervous. Their heart beats faster, but they do it anyway, and then something surprising happens, nothing catastrophic, nobody laughs, nobody attacks them, the world doesn't end. In fact, most people barely notice their mistakes. That's when they discover a powerful truth. Fear was bigger in their imagination than in reality. And once you experience that a few times, your entire mindset changes. You stop seeing fear as a stop sign. You start seeing it as part of growth. That shift changes everything, because most opportunities in life are hidden behind uncomfortable situations. The business opportunity that scares you, the investment that feels uncertain, the conversation you're afraid to have, the content you're afraid to post, the decision you keep delaying. Many times, the thing you want most is sitting on the other side of fear. But most people never reach it because fear convinces them to turn around before they get there. And modern life makes this even worse. Because today, people compare themselves constantly. Social media creates pressure. You see successful people showing perfect results. Money, cars, businesses, luxury lifestyles, but you rarely see the fear they faced before reaching that point. You don't see the failed attempts, the anxiety, the uncertainty, the sleepless nights. So people start believing successful individuals are somehow different, fearless, special, naturally confident. But that's rarely true. Most successful people were terrified in the beginning. The difference is that they acted before feeling ready. That's one of the biggest misunderstandings about success. People think action comes after confidence. Usually confidence comes after action. A person starts making videos while nervous, starts a business while uncertain, invests while afraid, speaks while uncomfortable. And through repetition, the fear slowly weakens. Not because they eliminated fear, but because they stopped listening to it. Think about learning how to swim. If someone stands at the edge of the pool for 5 years studying swimming techniques, watching videos, reading books, they still won't know how to swim. At some point, they have to enter the water. And yes, the first moments feel uncomfortable, but that discomfort is part of learning. Life works the same way. You cannot think your way into confidence. You build confidence through movement, and this applies to almost every area of life. A person afraid of investing waits forever. Meanwhile, someone else starts small and learns through experience. A person afraid of rejection never approaches opportunities. Meanwhile, another person gets rejected multiple times but eventually succeeds. A person afraid of failure never begins. Meanwhile, someone else fails repeatedly until they figure things out. That's why fear creates invisible winners and losers long before results appear publicly, because while one person is frozen, another person is collecting experience. And experience compounds, not just financially. Mentally, every challenge you survive changes you. Every difficult situation handled successfully increases your confidence slightly. And over years, those small moments completely transform a person. This is why courage is so valuable, not because courageous people never feel fear, because they refuse to let fear make decisions for them. Imagine if every major decision in your life was controlled by fear. You'd stay in jobs you hate. Avoid opportunities. Never speak honestly. Never take risks. Never discover your actual potential. Your world would become smaller and smaller over time. And sadly, that's exactly what happens to many people. They build their entire lives around avoiding discomfort. Safe choices, predictable routines, no risk, no uncertainty, and at first it feels peaceful. But years later, many of them feel trapped because safety has a hidden cost. Sometimes the biggest risk in life is avoiding risk entirely, because staying the same for decades can quietly destroy your future. The world changes, markets change, technology changes, opportunities change. But fearful people keep waiting for certainty, and certainty almost never comes. There will always be risk. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be a possibility of failure. That's life. The goal is not to eliminate fear completely. The goal is to stop letting fear control your decisions, and one of the most important moments in life is when you realize this. Failure is usually temporary. Regret can last forever. Many older people don't regret the risks they took. They regret the opportunities they ignored, the businesses they never started, the chances they never took, the dreams they delayed too long. Because eventually time becomes more painful than fear. And time is the one thing nobody gets back. That's why action matters so much. Even imperfect action changes your direction. Think about two people standing in the same place. One keeps planning forever. The other starts moving even slowly. At first, the difference between them looks small. But after 5 years, 10 years, the gap becomes massive because movement creates momentum and momentum changes lives. Once you start acting consistently, something powerful happens. Your identity changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is trapped by fear. You become someone who handles difficult things, someone who adapts, learns, recovers, improves. And that identity shift is life-changing. Because success is not usually one giant moment. It's small actions repeated despite discomfort. The entrepreneur who kept going after failure, the investor who stayed patient during uncertainty, the creator who posted despite criticism, the student who kept learning despite self-doubt. None of them waited for fear to disappear first. They moved with fear beside them, and over time, fear became quieter, not because life became easier, but because they became stronger. That's the real secret most people never understand. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action despite fear, and once you understand that, your entire future changes. Because suddenly, fear stops being a prison. It becomes proof that you're stepping into growth. So the next time fear tells you you're not ready, you might fail, people will judge you, understand something important. Fear is trying to keep you inside your current life, but if you want a different future, you cannot keep obeying the same fear that created your present. At some point, you have to move, before you feel ready, before you feel confident, before certainty appears. Because the people who change their lives are usually not the people with the least fear. They're the people who finally decide, my future matters more than my comfort.